Campaign. Man, we live on IG. Cool, cool.
Yeah.
My good brother, how's you living, man.
I am living, and that's a beautiful thing to be every day. I'm thankful for that.
For sure. Always
Sir.
thankful to have you here. We're gonna give a little time
I
for
appreciate the invite. Definitely.
man, I've been looking forward for a long time to just be able to chop it up with you in this space on the other side. You did the Heal Me campaign a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And I typically do it at the end of every year, but I thought it would be super dope to have you come on and serve in this role today. So I appreciate you being willing.
Man, I'm humbled by the invite, man. I'm excited about it. On the other side, I was having a conversation um with someone earlier, and I was like, I'm at that point, like we've known each other for like 20 years, man.
Yeah.
Upcoming. So
Yeah, we had
that's a
19.
long time. That's a long time to know somebody and to be in someone's presence from I guess boyhood to full grown manhood. So I don't take that for granted at all, man. I'm excited to be in this space, bro.
Yeah, man. I still remember you walking around with the flip flops and the straight backs.
Yeah, man, definitely. That was sauce. That's
That
what I came in with.
was
The,
so.
with the official straight bags, the white tee, black tee era was alive and well,
Looking
and I
like
was all
looking
about
like
being comfortable.
looking like an AN1 commercial.
Definitely.
That was it though. That was the style.
The super big shorts. The super big shorts. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was definitely me, man. We go way back. Way back.
for sure, man. For those who are on, so they jumped in. I guess they want to hear the story today. They jumped to Instagram quick today. Um,
That's what's up. I'm
welcome
glad.
everybody. Yep, yep. So I'm also not only we going live from Restream, but I'm also live from my coaching page, coaching Coach Yusha. So I'm actually gonna send a what up to everyone from my coaching page, so people know I'm in here, so I can kind of see what comments are happening. But
Yeah.
I'm so focused here, I'm not gonna really be able to see that the whole time. But for those who are here, welcome back. This is another night of the Heal Me campaign, Brotherly Conversations. We're for the month of May. Sunday through Thursday nights at 9 p.m., I talk to African American men about difficulties or challenges that they face in life and essentially how they've been able to come through those to get to a place of peace, power, and purpose. I did this because in 2019, I wrote a song entitled Heal Me, featuring Grammy nominated artist Raheem Devon, which talks about how my father raised me and subsequently he inadvertently taught me some very poor habits for healing and processing pain and grief and difficulty. Our guest tonight is a great brother of mine. He goes by Brandon, the therapist on IG, but his name is Brandon Allison. Brandon, can you tell us who you are, what you do, how we can support you, love you, show up for you? Let us know.
Oh man, definitely. Again, thank you for the invite, brother, and sharing this space. I've been working in the mental health field for 14 years now altogether. Been a licensed therapist, a licensed clinical mental health counselor here in the state of North Carolina for 5 years now. So I've worked in a lot of different areas of mental health. I like to say I had building blocks and stepping stones pretty much in my career before becoming a therapist. I've done your intensive in homes, a lot of juvenile justice work here in North Carolina, and just kind of moved into different sectors as far as like mentoring programs, mentorship, those types of things, and just kind of decided that I felt like my niche was in a different place. And that kind of led me to go back to school, kind of working in certain spaces, realizing that the work I was doing, I think, was helpful, but I think I wanted to be more directly, I think, impactful. Working with people on a more individual basis, or even families, couples. I think I wanted to work more with units than some of the things I was doing, and that led me to stay in mental health. But I wanted to go get the licensure to do it professionally. I felt like I was kind of tapping into it, like I felt like something was letting me know to go down that path, and so that's what I did, man. So it's definitely been a career. At this point, they say however long you've worked in mental health, double it. So if I've been doing it 14 years because of the constant interaction with people, it's like 28 in mental health years. That's what we do.
Dope, dope. Um, I'm sure that with the work you do, man, as we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but I'm sure that with the work you do, you've had to learn over time how to like uh, help people process their difficulties without necessarily taking on the energy yourself, man. How do you
Right.
manage to be um, so connected and so supportive of people as you help them process, but still have space and energy to maintain yourself?
You know what, man? That's a great question. I'm gonna be transparent on the front end, and acknowledge that that's not a perfect race, for myself, and anybody that is in the healing profession, or that provides a safe space for people. We all struggle with it, at times. I think, just being honest. And so for me, I think it was realizing, what needs to happen for me consistently to give me separation from work and life. And so I think I've found more balance than not, with connecting with things that are important to me. Family is important to me, friendships, um, things that I think are meaningful, and require less time, energy, and effort for me to actually enjoy them. I think that's kind of what I've arrived at. And so I think also understanding that any plan to take care of yourself is going to change. It's not going to be the same all the time. I had to learn that. I had to realize what my, I don't want to just say triggers, but I think I had to realize what burnout looked like for me, or when being tired and overwhelmed was starting to present itself. I had to be very honest with myself that yes, I can be a safe space for others, but it's also important that I create safe spaces for me to exist in. To also be honest when those feel threatened, when it doesn't feel like it's a safe space for me. But I think also, too, man, realizing what's my role in doing that. Like, I don't just expect that from everybody that's around me, or all my family and my loved ones. And I think I set good boundaries. I talk to friends about things, but I'll also direct them into a professional area. I love my friends, and they know that, but I can't take in everything. So I think setting in boundaries is very helpful for me. Understanding when that light goes off and I'm out of this office, man, I'm leaving it here. It's time for me to disconnect from something else and protect my own energy, so to speak.
Well, listen, we know that mental health is a real thing in the community. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. In June actually starts Men's Mental Health
It
Awareness Month.
does. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, that's they get them back to back months.
Yeah, and I know you'll be doing a lot of work. So because of the difficulty that our people are facing with mental health, truly being a crisis, man. I want to say, and no disrespect or discredit to our armed service people, but I still say thank you for those who show up in these spaces. So thank you, brother. I want to give our guests the layout for the night so they understand what's happening. It's going to be a little differently. Typically, start with the icebreaker, which is the Heal Me song with Raheem Devon, but we're not starting that way today. We kind of did our little icebreaker there. We're really gonna go right in. The interviewer, I am the interviewee. My brother Brandon Allison, Brandon the therapist, is actually going to be the interviewer today, leading me through my process and my conversation. We'll go into what broke me. We'll deal with my vices and the things that I took on to cope. We'll deal with my transition point, um, how I begin to come back to a place of peace, power, and purpose, and then what I'm doing on a constant basis to manage. But it'll be his job. It'll be his very intricate job to hear beyond what I willingly share. I always tell people this is a safe space with me and him, but this is the internet, so the space isn't necessarily safe. But I'm an open book, so I'm gonna give y'all whatever I can give y'all. But I'm trusting my good brother to help guide me through this conversation in a special way. After that, we will do the three P's, right? When do I feel most peaceful? When do I feel most powerful? When do I feel most purposeful? And then we'll end with actually a new video release. It is actually a re-video release of a song that's actually connected to this story. Last year, I did not do the Heal Me campaign because of what I was dealing with, and so we're gonna do a re-video release of one of my songs. So you got to get, brother.
It's on me. All
Lead
right.
me.
Yes, sir. All right. So I have to I wrote it down. I'll be honest with you, man. I know we used to memorize things at one point in time, but my memory is not as strong as it used to be. So I definitely wrote your purpose down, and that's actually kind of where I wanted to start with you. The share stories, your purpose for the campaign, as I read it, it says share stories of pain and healing that can inspire Black men to recognize that they are not alone. And I pause there, that they can request healing for themselves and take safe and healthy steps towards actually getting there. What type of space were you in when you identified that purpose for what you're doing?
I mean, so the Heal Me campaign, good question. The Heal Me campaign, I started that in 2020, right when we went into the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where I was in that space was I was in like my first run of full time entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had, during that time, I had spent a lot of time alone. Because full time entrepreneurship is just, it's a beast within itself. Um, and when the pandemic came, and I said this the other night, what kind of led up to me even being in that space is that I had two friends who were doing this workshop, and they asked two questions, and those two questions, hit me. But the first question was, who do you call when you're having a difficult moment? Like, who do you ask for help? And I said nobody, and was proud about it. It's like nobody. Good, what I mean. I'm used to figuring it out. What I mean. I'm gonna map it out. I'm the I'm the tail, right? I'm the horse, aka the pony. You see what I'm saying? I'm gonna figure it out. Jokes. But then they asked the second question. The second question they asked was like, who do you call to celebrate with?
Mm.
And I wasn't so proud about that one. Actually kind of brought a tear to my eye because I realized um, that relationships have been hard to maintain because I was not letting people help me, nor was I letting people celebrate me.
Mm.
Or what was I letting people do? Nothing. It was only really about how I showed up to give to people. It was almost like me showing up in spaces, giving, and then disappearing. And
That actually sounds pretty. I mean, that's an intense way to describe, like, you're still giving, but you're not taking anything back in. So it's like I'm a giver, but I'm not. I replenish nothing because I take nothing back from the people that I actually give to. I think that's a very interesting concept if you really look at it. Just as far as I think the person who asked you that question, I think there was a lot of intentionality with them asking, um, because where do we learn to be celebrated from? Like, where does that feeling of knowing that I want some type of recognition or some type of validation come from? Like, where do you feel like people learn that?
I mean, they learn that when they growing up, but I ain't learned that growing up.
Okay,
That ain't
so
learn. If you did anything good in my family and my community, you try to brag about it or celebrate it, you might get the response might be like, "Nigga, you want a cookie?" That's what you're supposed to do.
mm,
So you learn that like doing. And then I had the type of family, especially my brothers, where you couldn't do nothing halfway. My father was like that too. You couldn't do nothing halfway. If you was gonna do it halfway, you couldn't do it. So you learn to strive for excellence and meet certain goals and meet certain expectations uh,
mhm.
with no concept of celebration because it was like, oh nigga, that's what you're supposed to do.
So therein lies, I think, a big piece of why I wanted to read your purpose, because it talks about sharing stories to inspire Black men to recognize that they are not alone and that they can request healing. So when I asked you about where does that come from in celebration, and I think somebody even comment, parenting, your upbringing, our upbringing as Black men or as Black males at that time, I think says a lot about how we're introduced to pain, to what pain feels like, honestly, tolerance of
Mm.
pain or upset feelings because I am a male. The other piece that I think is interesting is that who did teach you to take care of yourself, and what does that actually look like? So when we look at habits that we likely carry into adulthood, they got to start somewhere. So knowing as a young black male that I even can request help. So that person asks you, who do you call when you need something? So that's like a very unhealthy self-reliance on self, right? And that
Hmm.
has to start somewhere. So when we talk about inspiring, we also have to educate and begin to reach back through spaces like this to teach people, teach young men that it is okay to actually do that, but actually give them, I think, a modeled version of what it looks like to see men be emotive, to know what being emotive looks like. Versus, well, my dad taught me unhealthy habits because I never seen him deal with anything. Or the way that I did see him deal with things may not have been the healthiest way, but it's all I know. So I may develop that into being the best way.
Yeah, but see, but the song talks about that for me. Heal Me talks about that for me because
Mhm.
my dad's way of coping with pain was a cup of coffee and a cigarette. And depending on how many cigarettes he smoked, you could tell what type of day he had. So if he had a tough day,
Mhm.
he might smoke a whole pack. If he had a good day,
True.
he'd be caught up in the fun, so he didn't smoke as much. But there was a store in Reedsville, North Carolina, where I'm from called Express Mart. My dad would go, he would get his cup of coffee, a cigarette, and he'd sit at the Express Mart, and he'd be there for hours just looking out the window, thinking or reading his paper or talking trash to people who came in. But that was like his decompression spot. And he didn't really have, outward expression. Now my dad was the type of dude who it might get a little dusty on him, and he might catch a tear from something, but he ain't gonna let you see it. He gonna wiggle out of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gonna wiggle out of that one.
Why you think he did that? Why you think he did that?
Yeah, country, they old country folks, man. They ain't them dudes won't doing that. They won't.
Hmm.
But my dad, honestly, was afraid to show up. But my dad was actually he was a nurturer in a sense. Now most people wouldn't know that because my dad played too damn much. He played too damn much with everybody. He picked on everybody. But his closest companions were the children. Like he kept the kids close to him because he loved people for real. But he loved like all the kids. Like my dad was like a hometown hero because he really would speak to anybody, talk to anybody. He loved everybody. He had a really tender heart, but no way to really express it. So he kept a lot of his pain in, and I watched that. I watched how he moved, and
Right.
yeah.
How much of that piece, like what you just mentioned right there, and I'm gonna dive into this because I think that leads to um, kind of will lead us to talking about your own personal journey with healing, and maybe even what pain has looked like for you. But I do you feel that you borrowed some of that from him? I guess before we dive into that, just in terms of how you process your own pain, just by looking at him and seeing that, or did you develop your own mechanisms, independently?
I mean, not at first because I didn't agree with it. I watched my dad. You also talking about a kid who used to beg his daddy not to smoke.
Mm,
Like I used to have nightmares of my dad passing away from lung cancer. So I used to beg him not to smoke. I used to beg my brothers not to leave the house and go do what they do because I used to like literally legitimately have fears of like my brothers and my father and them not returning home. So like it wasn't at first. Like when I was a kid, I was I'm sensitive. I tell people all the time, I'm sensitive. Don't get it twisted. If you ever see me get mad and I do something that you think is super mean, it ain't because I'm gangster or tough. I'm sensitive. You hurt me, and you know, got a response. But I was also a sensitive kid, and I didn't really develop.
sensitive to what though? I because I want to be able to open that up a little bit because that's broad. I'm sensitive to what?
I'm sensitive for sure to language. What people
Tone, what said, how it said, what?
what's said. I'm definitely sensitive to word choice. I'm definitely sensitive to tone.
Hmm.
You you can debate and argue with me, but you can't yell at me. And as a youngin, I might have spazzed out. As an adult, I might just look at you funny. And but it's just saying I'm sensitive. So I was an emotive child to a certain extent, and I would tell people like I ain't mind crying as a kid.
Same,
I just tell
same.
people if I cry, we're gonna have to fight. If you make me cry, we're gonna have to fight.
So you were angry because you were crying, or angry because someone said something to you?
Nine
Like
times out of
what's
10, I got angry first, then I cried, and then I had to make up for crying. So we had to fight.
that's a hell of a segue. I've never heard nobody say that. I had to make up for crying. So now I'm upset about it. That's
Yeah,
an
as
interesting.
a kid for sure. But I think
Hmm.
the harder responses, or what I would say, I did have a healthy development of how to handle my emotions. One is, you know, what I mean, I didn't want to be smiley white, so I learned at a certain point not to show a lot of emotion on my face, and I'm scarred by it. But I learned a healthy way to process emotions because a lot of my spiritual teaching. There's a poem that we both know by Rudy R. Kipling that says, "If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same." I took that language literal, and I
Hmm.
learned how to deal with the ebbs and flows of life. Right, things that are high and then the lows. I learned how to live in the middle space. I learned how not to take the highs too serious or the lows too serious. I learned that myself. I was talking about this with one of the other brothers.
Hmm.
So a lot of my emotional well-being didn't necessarily come from my father. This is the truth though. I did not like my father's practice for coping. And as a child, I did not like my own practice for coping. But I didn't know what uh, healthy practices were because I hadn't seen them.
So that's what I was going to ask, because when you mentioned that I developed some healthy ways to, process certain things, or process, like, how did you know, like, how do we know that it's healthy? Like, who defines that this is healthy for me? And then you just said, like, with your dad, like, you knew, like, I didn't want to do that. I had a disdain for smoking and so forth. So when do we know, like, that what we're doing, or when did you feel like this practice, through whatever teachings or spirituality, regardless, when did you know it was actually healthy though? Like, where do you know that that's where it's at?
I believe that a lot of my practices now are healthy because they're rooted in love, they're rooted in truth, and they've been tested through experience. As a middle school and high school educator of 6 years, I had to learn how to, I had to learn very quickly how to love people who couldn't receive it. I used to tell people like teaching is like walking into a classroom and trying to hug a kid while the kid is punching you in the face. It's like the equivalent to that. It's like trying to hug a kid.
That's what teaching is like. That's what it is
That's what it was like in DC, brother.
in
Listen, let me
DC.
say,
Okay.
sheesh, you might be like, good peace, King. Peace, King. Fuck you talking about, nigga. See what I'm saying? Like,
Oh wow. Okay.
and
I didn't know that.
because of
Okay.
the system, you know what I mean, discipline was different. So you had to learn to love people beyond their
Yeah.
trauma. And to do that, you had to learn to give without necessity for human reciprocity as a teacher.
True.
As a
And
teacher.
and people don't realize too. I just want to comment on it. People don't realize reciprocity is a learned behavior. That's a learned response to something. Everybody's not reciprocal. I've actually reduced most people, honestly, to either being really good at giving, or they're really good at being a receiver. I haven't met people who are really good at both, whether that's personally, professionally. You usually are either or. So that's why I think reciprocity as a language can get really lost in the middle of which one are you, and how do you know, because some people expect reciprocity, and so they treat people the way that they want people to treat them in return, and
Hmm.
then they're frustrated when that doesn't happen.
I tell people all the time, you know, that's one of my thought process. That's the craziest thing in the world. And I use the most practical understanding I can, right? If somebody you know in your family always asks to borrow money and you give that person money because they need money, it doesn't even make sense for you to think that they should pay you back. They have money problems. They probably will never have the money to pay you back. Give, and if they can't pay you back, just let it be charity.
Mm,
But I look at reciprocity from it's healthy for me because I look at reciprocity from both a practical and a spiritual sense or a universal sense, right? That
okay.
I may not get it back from that individual, but I
Wow. Okay.
will get it back.
But I will get it back. You know what? We're gonna dive into these questions, and while we do that, I'm gonna challenge something that you said a little bit when you talked about being in the middle. I grabbed on to that a little bit. You said I kind of I learned to be in the middle. I don't, didn't get really too high. And I also didn't, allow myself to get too low. But I think there's actually lessons in that though. And I want you to challenge yourself to have the bandwidth to be able to experience both. And the reason why I think from an emotional intelligence and a maturity standpoint, that could be helpful as we kind of go through these questions is I want you to think about what things am I not learning about myself emotionally because I don't experience really high highs? Because that's an emotional cap.
I think
I'm
I think
telling myself that
I
I
stopped
can't get
liking you.
too
I
high.
stopped liking you about 10 seconds ago.
I bet you did. You said this was my room. You said this was my space.
Oh, you feel
I just said keep it in mind.
push me, brother. I'm with you.
So I want you to keep that in mind when we talk about I don't allow myself. So there's a cap. So you're capping yourself. That's a form of protection. Anytime there's a cap like that, you're protecting yourself from something. What that is, I guess that could depend on the situation. But then the other part too is that I don't allow myself to get too low. Well, I'm not encouraging that we just be like, all right, cool, let's just free fall into unhealthy spaces, dark spaces, even. But I think you have to learn something about being in low places. I think there's something to be learned there. And I think there's also a lot of pressure, and I talk about this often with black men, to the two P's, pressure and performance. There's a lot of pressure then to remain in this middle area. And that middle area where pressure lives, usually performance is right beside it. So I want to just keep that in perspective. That cap that we talked about, right? Like I don't allow too high or too low. What things might I be missing to grow emotionally by experiencing those things? Because that's what we go through is experiences, right? That's what we're going through.
I can agree on that. Life is one big experience for sure.
Okay. It's full of a bunch of them. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we kind of jump into these questions, because I think that'll tell us some things as we get to, purposeful, powerful, and peaceful. You have your own set of words there too. So I'm gonna dive right into it with the question pieces now that we've kind of opened up with what we're talking about, where your healing practices not developed, but even the origin of how you felt about feelings. You talked about your dad and your siblings, and that's a lot of where we learn how to process or not to uh, deal with our emotions in whatever way. And you talked about a lot of that for you being in childhood. But now let's jump into your adulthood and let's kind of look at what did you go through and experience that broke you?
So this particular experience was not my breaking point. I had a breaking point before, but I've discussed it on a previous Heal Me campaign. But I want to talk about it because it was a time, and it was definitely a time. And it wasn't like a breaking point. It was like a breaking. And it's
Gradually,
yeah.
and then I broke.
I didn't break this time,
Okay.
but I still want to talk about this time.
Okay.
My breaking point was my divorce, but I've talked about that before, and I don't want to reiterate that story. Uh,
Sure.
but that was a low point that I learned from. Now this time, so it started. So the energy started with the. It started with a past relationship. A past girlfriend of mine. She sent me a write up of all the things she liked about our relationship, and then all of the things that she didn't like about the relationship, and a
Was
list of
this like an email or like a super long text?
email. And it was the list of things that she liked about the relationship was long. At first, it was long. I was like, "Oh, you liked a lot of stuff about the relationship. Great, we had a great time. So what happened?" And then I looked at the stuff she didn't like about the relationship, and I was like, "God damn, that's so long." But then I'm looking at the things she did. When she mentioned the things that she liked about the relationship, it was clear and concise. When she mentioned the things she didn't like about the relationship, she went into great detail. And on the great detail, I was just baffled because a lot of the things she said she didn't like about the relationship were things that I'd never even knew. One, and then two, she did a really good job of explaining her perspective of scenarios that I remember very clearly, and my perspective wasn't her perspective. And in my
Okay.
mind, I'm like, oh well, we could really just have a simple conversation about this because some of the ways that you saw it, that's not really what happened. And I thought maybe that by clearing that up for her, we would have an opportunity to just come to some amicable terms. But it didn't. And me being sensitive, I didn't take that with a grain of salt. Right? I didn't take that and just shrug it off. I ate it in ways that she didn't, and ways that people wouldn't know. And I called my brother Kariga Bailey, and we had a conversation because as a black man, his mother postured him in a way in which like he really embodies love. So I called my brother and was like, "Man, I got to talk about this. Like this is hitting me kind of hard." And that whole scenario put me in a space where I was like, "Yo, am I really a monster?"
A monster? Is that what she said? Or
I
is
mean,
that what
yeah,
you took from it?
no. She was definitely communicating that I was a monster.
Hold on,
She
hold on. I want to be real clear. Communicating that you're a monster and then her actually typing out that's what you are two different things.
no. She was definitely communicating I was a monster. She used these very strict words of me. She
Okay.
She called me abusive. She called me a narcissist, and she said that I was consistently gaslighting her.
So that's what you think a monster is.
But she used the word monster too.
Okay. I just wanted to get that she actually put that word out there.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm looking at this joint. I'm just like, if I if I if I was reading that email from the outside, like if I wasn't a part of the joint, I would have been like, oh, that nigga is a monster. But it's me, and I'm like, I know I'm not doing anything to you intentionally, but I got to take value to what you're saying, right? Like, so am I really something that I don't know I am? So I had to start like digging into like, and it was coupled too. It was coupled by my mother because post breakup, you know, what I mean, she stayed connected to my family in ways that I didn't stay connected to her family, but
Hmm.
even in a way in which kind of turned my own mother against me because my mom dealing with past abuse from men and still holding a lot of that weight and triggers. Kind of heard what what she talked about, and my mom took the posture of like, my mom even said to me one time, "You don't deserve no woman." Um, something. She
Did
it
you
was.
believe that to be true when she said it?
I mean, here's the thing. I don't believe it, and I don't want to receive it, but it landed because it was my mama,
Okay.
and I'm sensitive.
And I'm sensitive.
Remember that.
So was it how she said it, her tone, all of that? It was all of that put together?
A lot of it was just like it was also regurgitated issues with my mom, right? So it's like regurgitated issues with my mom. Um, though I have grace and love for my mother because I understand her, she can be hurtful. So that started it, bro. That started it. But that's not what did it all.
Okay.
So not only did I experience that, that put me in a place where I was vulnerable, completely vulnerable to attack. And remember, the definition of vulnerability is to be uh, susceptible to physical or mental hurt or harm. That's vulnerability. I was vulnerable. Then my uncle Joe died. My uncle Joe died of cancer. Right after my uncle Joe died, my uncle Willie died like a week later. While they was putting Uncle Willie in the ground, Uncle Jasper died in the hospital. Right after Uncle Jasper died, Uncle no Uncle Joe Nathan died first. Then Uncle Willie. No, then Uncle Pumpkin. Then Uncle Jasper. Then Uncle Willie. Then I got a cousin who passed away. Then our fraternity brother's mother passed away. Yeah. And my uncles were older. So it was kind of like it's okay because they older. They was like 80, 81, 70 something, 60. But what was happening was, as I saw each one of my cousins put their fathers in the ground, and as we saw our line brother put his mother in the ground, the pain that they felt, I was in a real vulnerable space. So I was
Mhm.
eating their pain, but primarily because I was absorbing their pain, but also because watching them put their fathers in the ground reminded me of putting my father in the ground repetitively.
That makes sense.
And I remember not even really being able to cry when I put my father in the ground because I had responsibilities connected to his death.
Hmm. Again, that's also, I'm just going to remind you, with even in that statement, that's that cap that I'm talking about. I prioritize the responsibilities over allowing myself to cry, even as I'm burying my own father.
That was 2008 when I buried him.
Hmm.
And I know I didn't process that grief properly, but I also know that I wasn't processing my uncle's the grief that I was feeling from my uncle because I was watching it repetitively. I think I had a moment at our line brother's funeral, mother's funeral, where I was choking on tears because I didn't want them to pour out, right? Because in my mind, it was not okay for me to be that teary eyed for their mother when I wasn't that teary eyed for my father. But I knew that the tears I had in my eyes wasn't just for their mother. Ain't this crazy? Wasn't just for their mother. The tears that I had in my eyes was for my father.
Mm.
But I
So
didn't
why
feel
not let him go?
because to me that wasn't the appropriate place.
So here's the thing. I want to add to that. Grief doesn't know where you are. Grief doesn't know your location. There's no GPS for it. Grief doesn't care about that. You can have vicarious experiences through other people because that in itself is triggering your own personal law.
Sorry, brother.
That's okay. But truly, vicarious loss is a very real thing. And I think this cap that you have on these highs and these lows, I think in a lot of ways, brother, it sounds like a part of what was breaking you, even in addition to what the comments that this young lady made. But I think this level of vulnerability, you not allowing you kind of stunt your emotional growth.
You think
But
so?
which is interesting to me, and I'm a shift this back to you. But it's interesting to me that you'll receive these descriptions about yourself. But I'm wondering, what do you really think on your own? Because you like receive these, like this monster idea, this concept of being sensitive. Like you have a lot of emotional labels for yourself that I think you've taken in and made a part of who you are.
You think so? Maybe.
I think there's some room for it.
I mean,
Like I'm sensitive.
in,
And now I take in this monster. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot to
in
take in.
in the spirit of what you're saying, I think me even receiving those comments from her was an attempt at being like, listen, I don't believe that she's seeing me correctly. I don't
Mhm.
believe that she's seeing my heart correctly. But there has to be something in this that I need to learn from it. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be experiencing it. So my ability to even or my connection to even allowing some of that shit to land
Right.
with you being like, yo, it's got to be something here I need to learn. So let me really process this shit. And so saying let me process this shit led to me saying, am I? And having to go through this whole sifting process.
Did you answer the question? Did you say
Eventually, eventually I did.
what was the answer?
I mean, eventually over time, I answered the question was like, no, I'm not. I'm not. Um, I am love. I love to love. That's who I am. Like that's how I give. And my love model may be different, and my model may be hard to understand. But I had to explain this to somebody recently. Like they like, you do a whole you do stuff different than everybody else. And I had to give them a whole layout. Like, man, if you had my life and my understanding, you do stuff like I do stuff too. I am a free giver. You know what I mean? Now, if we talking business, I'm transactional in the mud. Like, give me my money. But outside of business, bro, like I don't have an immediate request of people. And I have grown to a point where I will accept when people give to me if they want to. I've grown to allow that.
Mm,
But I don't have a request of people. You see what I'm saying? Like a lot of stuff I do, I just do. Like my mom used to, some good stuff that my mom said, like my mom used to say, like, the only time you should be secretive is when you're giving. You know what I mean? Don't tell everybody you giving, just give. And then
I can buy that.
and I'm a type of person I'll give to you. I prefer to do it this way. I'll give to you without you even knowing it was me. If I can manage it. Because that's what I was taught. And so I was able to affirm this, but after time, because here's the point. Going through all of that drama with my uncles and them passing, with family members passing, people around me passing, and this was 5 people, this was 6 people in the course of like all of my uncles who died,
Mhm.
those uncles, they died in 5 weeks.
Wow.
And I'm in DC and been in DC for 13, 14 years because this is 2021 when this is happening.
So this is like peak, like pandemic, all of that's kind of going on.
But they're not dying. The only one who died of COVID is our line brother's mother. Nobody else is dying of COVID,
Hmm.
right?
Just
And
old age, natural causes, and
cancer, stuff like that.
cancer. Okay.
I feel like my uncle Jasper definitely died of grief. He definitely died of grief. But um, this is happening within the course of 5 weeks. And I
Right.
live in DC. I don't live back home in North Carolina. And sometimes I'm able to make it back and sometimes I'm not. And what's happening to me is I'm watching the last remnants of my father disappear because these dudes look just like him.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And I'm
Hmm.
watching family disappear and I ain't even close enough to touch him. And
Right.
so I got to this place where I did not want to think because thinking was making me sit and I didn't want to think. And I got to this place where it's like, I just want to be. I just want to be. I want to feel whatever happens, happens. I don't want to plot or plan nothing because this much death was making me feel like I couldn't control anything anyway. I couldn't control anything. I had no sense of bearings. And on top of that, I didn't even know if I could really trust myself because here's somebody that I truly love telling me this version of myself and laying this shit out in this long, detailed ass email. And I'm like, who is this guy? But like, so the lack of trust, then all of this grief, I don't want to think. And so I'm essentially at a point in 2021, there was a time period, bro, where I had probably the worst weekend of my life. I I I converted back to the worst versions of Jay Black for like 4 days straight
Mm.
for the sake of not wanting to be decisive and just be wherever I was and whatever happened, I was
So
and I was with the shits.
that's a good segue because when you said lost control, you do have this split piece of you that's trying to do a self-assessment on, am I this monster, am I this person, and it's questioning, I'm questioning myself, I don't trust myself. Meanwhile, going through what we would call compound grief, you have consecutive instances of loss, again capping yourself, not allowing yourself to feel any of that because you didn't feel that it was the proper placement, or give yourself permission to do that. So what vices were you using at that time, whether in that weekend or just in general? What were your vices?
I told myself I wouldn't go, and I'm not. I'm not gonna go into full depth about how I allowed myself to show up.
Okay.
But what I will say is that everything that I consider to be my moral fortitude, the things that I would not do as Yusha. And I'm using the distinction between Yusha and Jay Black because you get it.
I do.
I would not be the things that I would not do as Yusha that I may have done as Jay Black.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, it went all down that weekend and have not.
Let me pause that. I just How often is that a part of your decision making? Or matter of fact, scratch that question. Which person is more comfortable with feeling, Jay Black or Yusha? Or is there a cap on both in terms of the highs and lows and kind of still trying to find that middle?
Jay Black is a feeler without intentionality. The dangerous guy. Yusha is a feeler with intentionality. I'm a feeler. I feel everything. I'm a Capricorn too. So people gotta understand that I feel everything. My ability to like outwardly express it. You know,
Hmm.
I'm the type of dude you could be like, I could be looking like this. And you'd be like, what's wrong? I'd be like, shit, man, shit, I'm good. You happy, nigga? Yeah, I'm happy. But it won't show on my face. You know what I mean? I might be
You
thinking.
can have a very blank face, very blank, for sure.
So, but I feel everything. What was happening that weekend was this. I did not want to be decisive about where I was going and what I was doing because I didn't feel like I could control anything or trust anything, and I couldn't trust myself.
Mm.
So I allowed myself to be pulled in whatever direction of the energy around me. Now, some of the things I will share, because I won't share everything, because I got into some real crazy shit that weekend, but I definitely went to the casino and gambled a lot. Not only did I gamble a lot, I got pissy drunk and drove home drunk. Like
You was into taking a lot of risk that
crazy,
weekend.
crazy drunk. Got home that night and jumped in a DM I shouldn't have been in and had to deal with the consequence of that morning. And then that weekend, allowed myself to get caught up in some shit that I shouldn't have got caught up in that I ain't gonna talk about. But part of the destruction of that, part of the like accountability from that weekend, like when it really hit ahead for me, is somebody called me on Tuesday to express to me how I had hurt them that weekend.
Hmm.
And my response to them was, you think that you're hurting me? You would never be able to hurt me more than I'm hurting myself right now. Like I felt like it was their intention to like hurt me, to make me feel all that I had made them feel that weekend. And I was like, you don't even know what I'm doing to myself. Like you don't have the tools to hurt me the way I'm hurting myself right now. Because by the time the weekend was over, I'm looking back at the weekend like, who the fuck am I?
So
Like
you're still asking that question: Who am I?
doing
Grieving a lot of risky responses. I would say with gambling and the alcohol piece, driving. I'm trying to. I'm on a search. I'm on a quest of self destruction in a way to pacify certain feelings, ignore certain feelings, and I'm just lashing out. That's kind of where I'm at.
and I'm also in this place of discovery because if I can also include this in it, I'm also the type of person where most people, I'm absorbing too much of what people telling me about myself too. Because at the
Mm.
end of the day, a lot of what I'm experiencing is repetitively being also told by people that you need to allow yourself to feel. You are not feeling. You are doing too much thinking. You are in your head too much. You need to feel. You need to feel. So part of this shit was like, let me turn my head off and see what it feels like to just go with the feelings. What put me in
Interesting way to go about getting some feelings.
I was trying to I was going extreme because I was trying to find what that meant for people.
Mm.
Um, I was at this cigar bar that same weekend, but I was at the cigar bar on that Sunday, and me and my boy was in there. We were sitting these cigars, and it was just this guy was in there. We ended up talking to him. He ended up telling us what his business is, all this other stuff, and he leaves. And he comes back like 5 minutes later. He was like, "Bro, I don't know why, but something told me to come back and tell you about this book." And he tells me about the book, and the book is called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And in the book, it talks about how the devil really has no power, um, that his only power is to influence people to be what they call drifters. His only power is to influence people to be drifters. And the book defines drifters as people who do not make decisive decisions about how they want to live their lives. They don't make decisive decisions about how they eat, what they want to drink, how they want to love, how they want to show up. Essentially, drifters are people who just go with the wind. Because the moment you go with the wind, you can then be susceptible to the devil's pull. And it resonated with me because that weekend of just going with the wind, what I realized, and I said this and I say it responsibly and not cocky, but also understanding, I have big energy. And if I do not tell my energy where to go, somebody will pull me, because that's what happened that weekend, right? I'm taking accountability for my decision to go, but a lot of me going was because people were calling me.
Energy is power, and power is energy. I
And
tell people
because
that
I
all the
wasn't on my shit where I'm like, because normally everybody know me to be disciplined. I ain't going. Because I wasn't on my shit where I was like, nah, and I was really on some like whatever comes in my realm of. I literally walked into the weekend saying, whatever comes into my realm of influence, I'm a yes man all weekend. Let's go.
it's whatever.
And by the
You
end of
said
the
I'm
week,
with the shits.
I was with the shits. And by the end of the weekend, I was like, no. So I know you asked about coping. So all of that was part of the coping. But let me also add this and move a little faster. That September, my Uncle Luke dies. No, that August, my Uncle Luke dies. That September, my nephew Raheem dies. That November, one of my good friends in Atlanta commits suicide and passes. And that shit broke my fucking heart because he was one of them dudes. And I couldn't understand for the life of me how he got to that point. And then December 30th, on my birthday, the day that I got to do a concert and a giveaway. I'm doing a concert and a giveaway for needy families for the holidays. My one of my favorite cousins that I grew up with, who's our same age, her son passes away in the hospital that morning. And I woke up to that. And yeah, I don't want to feel shit else. And so I bought Xbox and I drowned hours of my life away for about 6 months playing Call of Duty. Call of
How?
Duty.
I mean, what were you getting out of that at that point? Or I just
Well, I was playing Call of Duty with my best friend Doug. And I'm joking. That's a joke for us. That's an inside. My best friend Brandon. I was playing Call of Duty with him, and I would only play the game when Brandon was on the game. But I realized that I was losing more people than I could keep up with, and I was finding
Mhm.
any way I could to connect. And I think I also was having a legitimate fear that I would lose somebody else before I got a chance to spend time with them.
You know what I also think is interesting with that too, and I'll just add to that because I want to get to your transition point, but I think it's interesting that you're in the process of trying to find yourself and you're having this identity challenge with what someone is saying about you, and then also going through a lot of loss. And I think that can be very damaging for someone who's in search of something to then feel like there's this constant reminder that I'm losing fragments of where I'm from and people that I'm connected to or that have a connection to my father. I feel like that's a very intimate circle to be stuck in and kind of be in a cycle of a revolving loss as I'm in search of who I am and who I want to be.
Maybe.
Like I can see where that's just damaging to your energy and spirit. And so we've talked about vices, what you've had. What was the transitional period for you? Let's talk about that really quickly. Like, what was the transitional point? And I'm gonna combine how did that lead you into feeling more powerful or purposeful and peaceful?
I wouldn't have thought there was a few transitional points. For one, I left my job. I left my job at the government because my supervisor brought me in one day. First of all, my job was a toxic environment. Everybody in that bitch was coming back in the office full time from COVID with their own little microaggressions. After being able to sit in their own energy at home, was then brought back to the office dealing with everybody else's fears and microaggressions and not even knowing how to show up in love with each other. So that bitch was hella toxic, and I hated to be in there. But my supervisor called me to the office one day. She was like, "Bro, your light dimming." She's like,
Mm.
when you first got here, you was on fire." She's like, "Can nobody touch you?" She was like, "But your light is dimming and it's clear." And I got teary eyed in the mud because I knew I was heavy, but I also knew that I could not heal at the job because they were going to judge me every day for the quality of work that I was. putting in or not putting in, but I was playing injured.
So they were going to judge you no matter where you were at in your life at that time without the recognition that that's what's playing a role in why I'm not showing up in the way you want me to.
Right? It's like any good athlete, right? They gonna we Jason Tatum took that L last night, right? He took that L, but that
Yeah, you
boy's
do.
ankle was hurt. So somebody's gonna be like, Jason Tatum sucks, or he boom boom boom, but he playing injured. And I realized I was playing injured, and I'm like, yo, I need to heal. But I'm coming in a toxic environment every day that ain't even speaking to it. And the work you got me doing ain't even connected to what I know I'm supposed to be doing. I'm in this job every day filing papers and cutting my finger. So I'm saying like I so one, leaving my job was a transition. Two, I went out to Cali and spent some time with my boy Kariga and Felicia. And I really went out there to love up on them because they had a child. But I kind of needed that brotherhood myself. I needed, for the first time in my life, I actually was willing to say I needed people. Um,
First time in your life, I said I need something. So now I'm asking for help.
I'm not even asking for help. I'm really just showing up to help people. In my mind, I'm showing up to help people, but
Right,
I'm lingering in the spaces where I'm helping to see if somebody will, see if something will rub off on me. That's
right,
really what's happening because I'm not verbally being like, I need you. I'm just like, I got
right.
you. We'll pull up, but then I linger to
Stay a
get.
little longer, stay a couple days, stay a couple extra days.
Oh, I went out there for 7 days. I was supposed to be there for a week and was there for 2 weeks and only came home because some energy back here in the DMV was calling me.
Some energy. That's what we're gonna call it. Some energy was calling you back in the DMV.
It
I
was
keep
energy.
telling you, man, energy is power and power is energy. So it makes sense that that's a part of that story. But I think that's interesting that you were allowing yourself to kind of replenish, even while still not verbalizing, even going back to your purpose, request healing for themselves, because a request to me is a form of communication. But it sounds like your request that you needed to be in a around healing energy was just pulling up and being able to allow yourself to be poured into in a way, a new baby, being with someone that you trust, and that felt like a safe space. You've experienced a lot of loss and death, and now you're around brand new life, brand new energy.
Yeah, we do it. We did a lot of writing too, man, because he was going through his own difficult and challenging. That's his story to tell. But we did a lot of writing. I think I probably one of the realest pieces I wrote during that time was we did this poem, this song called Strange Fruit. And at my boy's house in Cali, he got all these like natural fruit trees going in the yard. It's like he got apples, he got oranges, lemons, dates, all of these trees of fruit like grow in his backyard. And it was like a sign. It was like a sign. We were watching this ripeness of like we were sitting in almost like a garden of Eden in his backyard, rolling up, writing music, enjoying the moment, but also sitting in this like moment of pain. And it was almost like God was like, "Don't worry about it. Your harvest is coming. Like everybody got to go through
Wow.
this." And so I wrote. I mean, I'll share this because it's on the heart. It's just connected. It's probably one of the realest pieces I wrote during that time. But I said, know your worth, never take less. Find a place of peace and just take rest. A slice of pie that we all deserve on this road to success. That's a conscious swerve. A pit stop to tap in will improve the drive. Get settled in your spirit, you can cruise and ride. And even when the traffic's at a heavy flow, you can move through the lane, something steady, bro. I told my sister it's our time, just do the work. Digging through is hidden in our minds to remove the hurt. Mama told me to just shake it off when they throwing hate. Tried to bury me, but I planted seeds and they growing great. Pop died, I fell hella deep and with no escape. Got divorced, that shit broke my heart in so many ways. Lost friends, they said the grinding was selfish shit. 30 came, sleep in my car, niggas ain't help for shit. I am who I am because I dealt with shit. Been through the pits of fire because I felt the shit. That's why I got a spirit that you can't tame, working and healing black men through this campaign. If they don't know shit about you but your damn name, they should do what Granny said, don't say a damn thing. I tap in with my own spirit and catch a vibe. I celebrate for my loved ones who are still alive. And so in that piece is like bits and pieces of everything that I'm feeling in this one little verse. And I think that gave Kariga a glimpse of what I was truly dealing with because I wasn't really saying what I was dealing with. And
I think you requested help right then, your
mhm.
own way, support, love, all of that.
So that was it. Transition. My visit to Kariga, the tour that I went on helped because it put a lot of purpose. It gave a lot of purpose to me. I got to walk in my purpose, and I got to like quiet it down. Um, but essentially, I think the thing that really did it was I really, bro, was just trying to practice consistent self care despite how I was feeling. And I couldn't do it every day because some days I didn't want to get out of bed. You know what I mean? Some days I would play Call of Duty all day because I couldn't push myself to do work. But on the days when I had the energy, I would just do it. And I think one of my most consistent friends during the time was my business partner, Raji, because he ain't never take me to task. He just was like, I got you. I got you. I see, I see what it is. Do what you need to do. And it just put me in a posture where like on the days when I couldn't do it, I just didn't. And on the days when I could, I did. And I think over time, the days when I could do it became more than the days when I couldn't. And I think right around December or January of last year, 2022, I remember it, bro. It was like I woke up and like a weight was gone. It
Mm.
was like it all had just like, and I was like, I'm back. I feel it. I'm back. I'm back. But I think what allowed me to get there was, and I have a song called Form, which talks about that. But I think what allowed me to get there was this time and just trying to be consistent with practicing self care, prayer, meditation, stuff like that. But it took time because I was wearing something that I couldn't shake. And I probably could have done it faster if I went to therapy, but I didn't. So I was really just dealing with the shit on my own.
What kept you away from a therapeutic room? I just want to ask real quick.
I had a therapist before, and through therapy, I just feel like I ain't getting no help. I think dude, good black man, strong black man, but I think he was too inspired by me to challenge me. And ended up telling me after a few sessions of therapy, he was like, bro, you don't really need therapy. Like you really a well-oiled machine in a sense. You don't really need therapy. And so the
You had
process,
a therapist tell you you didn't need therapy?
yeah, he said that to me. And I was like,
Mm, that's interesting.
I mean, here's the thing. A lot of the things that he was trying to suggest that I do, I was already doing. And I was only really going to therapy at the time because somebody suggested I should go to
That
therapy.
you should go. Mm,
But I didn't really feel like I needed it at the time. But I did need it at during this time, but was skeptical about who to go to because I needed to be with somebody who was not afraid to help me really deal with that shit. Because I am smart and I am talkative and I'm intelligent and I can wiggle around some shit like a mother. So I needed to be with somebody who wouldn't be enamored by the way I speak and would
sure.
be confident enough to challenge the challenge the task.
Well, I know we are we're actually a little over on the time, but I still want to know. You talked a little bit about the purpose, and I think finding some of that in the garden. It sounds like, but I'm really interested for you to share at this point doing therapy, meditations, your spirituality. You have your business, your music. You're an artist, a father. Like you have a lot of things that you are a part of that I would gather that feed you in some way. What's bringing you peace right now?
Peace right now.
Mhm.
Me and Kariga have a saying. I think I said it first, and we just both were just like, "Oh, we got to live with that." But there's a saying I say, "When your faith has been tested and death has been dealt with, you move different." And I think the thing that's really bringing me peace is that I have I have taken on the hard task of stepping away from comfort to live the life that I feel like God sent me to live. And the thing that gives me peace is that I get to wake up every day and do what I felt like I was sent here to do. because I
Mm.
think all of that death taught me that the only thing I have control over is the time in between. And Lauren London said something that I agreed with because I was already feeling that. But I want to quote her for saying it just in case if anybody's seen that interview, where she said the only thing that she wants to do before she leaves is she wants to do what she was sent here to do.
Wow, man. I think that's a construct that I don't think many people understand. I think how layered that can be, or I guess essentially we're kind of talking about some self-actualization. And I think for anybody that's into the psychology of that, some people think you never reach that part in terms of the pyramid, that you may never get to self-actualization or realizing what that purpose is, or tapping into what that looks like along the journey, for different reasons. A lot of people can fall victim to that, I think, because of their grief. Because I think what you have to realize is grief and loss and those types of um, tracks that we all go through and experience, they're going to pivot you in various ways. And your response or your ability to tap into resiliency, to learn from those things, has a big impact on, as you put it, taking safe and healthy steps towards getting there. And I think some people's there is going to look and feel different. Everybody's there is going to look and feel different. And I'm wondering, um, for you, do you feel like where you sit right now as you still battle and deal with grief? Because that's the thing, grief, loss, and some of those things, even as you talk about them, they sit with us. Like we hold those things. Do you feel like you're on your way to you're there, taking safe and healthier steps to get there, wherever that may be?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I'm definitely on the right path. And for those who believe, like I see signs, bro. Like I really see signs. I really feel like I get communicated from, or I get communicated to through the spiritual world about the path that I'm on or what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like my practices are healthy. I feel like my practices were always healthy. It was just at one point they weren't working. That's what it was. I've always felt like my practices were healthy. It's just at one
Okay.
point they weren't working, and I needed to.
Go to the depth to figure out why either one, those aren't working for me anymore, or how do I update those? How
Yeah,
do I update them so that they're giving me more? I think, and I think that's really a good point. I'm glad you made that before we close, because I do work with clients on that. Like if you were running before, but it's not giving you the same feeling, there's something else there. Like if running is what gives you that release, or exercise, or whatever it is, you have to understand, I think, when that's no longer landing or that's not meeting its mark. Sometimes it's not always about the activity. I think sometimes you can update those things, but why isn't this working for me or serving me in some way? Because anything you do to take care of yourself should be service to you, not you being of a service to the activity, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, and I spent because I couldn't figure it out. It was like if you had an allergy, a food allergy, how you would remove all food and then bring things back slowly to see what actually. I think I did the same thing with tasks in my life because I was such a task oriented person before 2020 2021. This time period put me in a place where, especially after leaving my job, I removed all activity from my life, even to the point where there were days when I was just sitting in my house doing nothing. And then I only start to bring back the things that I felt like were directly aligned with making my spirit feel well. And, you know,
Ooh, I like that. Things that make my spirit feel well, or that are in alignment
you
with
like
what makes my
it until
spirit
your,
feel
you like it until your landlord come calling.
well. Listen, man, I'm a wrap it here, man. I hope people, tapped in and tuned into this. I hope a lot of brothers tuned into this, and embodied, I think, really your purpose. I think that's what stood out to me a lot, man. That is a very a well designed purpose, for what you're doing. I salute what you're doing, for men to be able to request spaces like these, to walk through doors imperfectly, to leave those doors imperfectly. But I think understanding that there's a journey for us all, that we are going to feel and experience pain, but you're going to experience it differently. And you have to choose how you want to do that, to experience those things, and request safe spaces and safe and healthy steps each and every day. So I salute what you're doing, brother, and I appreciate you inviting me on and taking a role in the other seat and being vulnerable because you're sensitive and shit. So I appreciate you taking that step, man. That's another step in your healing journey, brother. I salute you.
Thank you, bro. I don't mind my sensitivity now. That helps me feel and connect to other people. Once again, brother, I want to thank you. Due to the fact that we're very close friends, I can't actually hire you as my therapist, which pisses me off because that's just American fucking law. That ain't God's law. It's American law.
Too close to the. We are close, man. You're a really, really good friend of mine. So
Get American law. American rules can be broken. But nah, I don't want to put your job at risk. But I appreciate you. I love you. And I knew you would be the
love you
perfect
too,
person
brother.
to have this conversation with. Before we tap out, y'all, those who are watching, um, part of my healing journey was having to learn to trust myself again. And I want you, most of the people who follow my music journey, you know that I don't do anything haphazardly. And so every single song written on my next album. So my next album, Working to Win, and drops July 12th. That's the day my father passed. That's how close he's sticking with me right now. Every single song on that album was written as part of a healing process for me during this time. And this is one of those songs. So for those of you who've seen the video, cool. For those of you who haven't, trust yourself. If you don't trust nobody, then trust yourself. It's one of the greatest lessons I've learned. Shout out to Inyala Van Zandt for helping us to see what trust really means. Let's get it.
Just stay focused on the plans that you have. Don't let them taper your emotions, they're just making you sad. They wanna control you, they console you just to say that they had your back. And we know that is just a lie, and in fact they wanna push on your emotions, all the pains that they have. Make you a villain in their village so they do not see bad inside themselves, hide themselves, and will not be glad to see you win outside the plans that they have. But trust yourself to be all you said you'd be. Oh, trust yourself to be more than what you see. Oh, trust yourself. Trust yourself if nobody else. As long as you got you, you're never by yourself. My daddy used to say don't get beside yourself, but you see the picture clear from outside yourself. Speak your truth, never hide yourself. It takes too many years to find yourself. They used to ask me, who are you? I couldn't say, I had to find myself. I took the time to realign myself. Searching the industry for gold, but be bold enough to mind yourself. And you might find that you're a dime yourself, or a diamond in the rough to be cuffed by only time itself. Learn how to outshine yourself. Take your time, become your timeless self. Put your heart inside your grind, be the energy behind yourself. Look in the mirror, say I'm great, and do that to remind yourself that you'll still become your higher self. And just stay focused on the plans that you have. Don't let them taper your emotions, they're just making you sad. They wanna control you, they console you just to say that they had your back. And we know that is just a lie, and in fact they wanna push on your emotions, all the pains that they have. Make you a villain in their village so they do not see bad inside themselves, hide themselves, and will not be glad to see you win outside the plans that they have. But trust yourself to be all you said you'd be. Oh, trust yourself to be more than what you see. Oh, trust yourself. Conversations over faith and fear. Faith to tell you leave, fear keep you here. Running through the scenarios in your mind, scared to make the wrong decision every time, so I don't decide. Living the indecision after hurt again, hoping to meet your expectations so we both can win. But I don't meet your expectations and get chastised. I say that I love you, then I backslide. But really, you don't like it when I do it my way. Ain't satisfied when I do it your way. So what decision to make? I don't think I'm gonna be loved either way. I don't think that you know love either way. I don't think you love you either way. I think you in the way. If you and I having real love either way, I got decisions to make. I think I'm just gonna do it my way. Love you on purpose, let you push it away. Just stay focused on the plans that you have. Don't let them taper your emotions, they're just making you sad. They wanna control you, they console you just to say that they had your back. And we know that is just a lie, and in fact, they wanna push on your emotions, all the pains that they have. Make you a villain in their village so they do not see bad inside themselves, hide themselves, and will not be glad to see you win outside the plans that they have. But trust yourself to be all you said you'd be. Oh, trust yourself to be more than what you see. Oh, trust yourself.
Brother, I want to be super mindful of the role that you play as husband and father in your household and the necessary processes and steps that y'all go through every night to quiet the family and to spend time with your people. I love you. I appreciate you for showing up for me today.
You already know, man. I love you too, brother, and I appreciate the invite, man. Keep this campaign going, man, and we can run this back next year. I appreciate you providing this space for not only me, but letting brothers know out here that spaces like this need to exist and have to exist for all of us. So appreciate you, bro.
Indeed. Thank y'all. It's been a great month.
Take care.